The Broadway theater has produced some of the greatest entertainers in the world, and as the times have changed, so has the performer. What they have in common is a magnetic quality that draws the audience in. It emanates from their talent, the aura they cast from the stage, or across the screen. Naturally, yours truly has their own favorite performers. People who, at one time or another, I might have obsessed over. You know, when you went to the library and signed out all of their cast albums in bulk. When you stayed up late to record their 3.5-minute Letterman performance on VHS. Or in the dead of New York winter, when you stormed the stage door of the Marquis Theater to get a picture with them after the show. Yeah. I don't know if I have a favorite. I don't have a top 10, a top 5. Those sorts of things actually really stress me out. But if I were to have a favorite, Audra McDonald would be right up there. I know I briefly talked about her in a previous episode, but I think Audra deserves her very own episode. The accomplishments of this woman are both impressive and inspiring, and since 2020 has been a dumpster fire of the year, I think we should finish it off with a bit of inspiration, if I say so myself. Audra McDonald's career has been defined by memorable and iconic Broadway performances, countless awards and accolades, and an ability to navigate through different mediums with seeming ease. This unique and singular career is the result of a unique and singular path that she has forged through the merits of her talent, a commitment to her craft, and her advocacy for equality in the theater community and for the world at large. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about Audra McDonald, her peculiar path to Broadway, and how her work in the entertainment industry continues to break barriers and forge new opportunities for the next generation. When you think of Audra McDonald, one of the first things that comes to mind is her voice. Her clear and classically trained lyric soprano that soars one moment, then coos gently with assured and controlled ease. She appears just as comfortable in any opera house or concert hall as she would be on the Broadway stage. Audra McDonald's mammoth talent is simply too special to be confined to one art form. One wonders what her younger self might have thought if she knew where her career would take her. Audra McDonald was raised in Fresno, California. Growing up in a musical household, she fell in love with Broadway music. To harness her hyperactive energy, Audra's parents helped her get involved with the local theater scene, and by her teens, she was performing regularly in dinner theater productions like The Wiz and Evita.
I decided I wanted to be an actress, and a musical theater actress, and my voice teacher at the time, I was kind of studying, and he would say, sing this aria, and I'd be like, no, I'm going to belt, you know, and I was always trying to belt everything out. And so he said, come on, just why don't you try an audition for Juilliard, just to see what it's like, just to see what the operatic program would be like. And I said, okay, it'll be a nice trip to New York, and you know, my mom will pay for it, cool, I'll do it. And I sang a soprano aria, and I told them I was a mezzo-soprano, and I did some optional ending, just things you're not supposed to do at all in classical music, and they laughed at me at my audition. And then they asked me, they said, how old are you? And I said, well, I'm 17, and they just laughed again, and I thought, well, I blew this, you know.
But to her own surprise, she was accepted, making the move to New York City. Audra's time at Juilliard was difficult, to say the least, often finding herself at odds with teachers who pushed her to find the operatic side of her voice. In classical voice programs, the quality of the voice is most often the first concern, and considerations of acting are cast secondary. While many institutions today take acting components much more seriously, this fundamental shift in Audra's training caused her tremendous anxiety, even though she was living in the city she had always wanted to be in.
I just wanted a ticket to New York.
It's a tough school.
It is a very, very tough school, and it was tough for me, especially because I was there in this classical program and not wanting to be there. I was in the wrong place, and I could see Broadway, you know, from my dorm room, and what was I doing, you know, singing in Italian.
Things got so bad, Audra suffered a mental breakdown and attempted suicide. She has always credited Juilliard for their support during her recovery, granting her permission to take a sabbatical from her studies rather than just dismissing her. She has also credited specific teachers at the school who supported her inherent talent, teachers like Ellen Fall, a retired opera singer who had vocally trained Broadway performers like Gwen Verdon and Sarah Brightman. Ellen Fall would help keep her head in the game, as Audra would later put it, assuring her that whatever path she chose after Juilliard, a classical technique would do her well in her career. During Audra's sabbatical from Juilliard, she auditioned and was cast in the ensemble for the national tour of The Secret Garden, eventually transferring to the New York production, where she made her Broadway debut before graduating from Juilliard in 1993. But it was her next Broadway show that would make audiences and critics take note of her.
With the hum of bees, the birds will make a racket in the churchyard trees. When I marry Mr. Snow.
British director Nicholas Hytner cast Audra in the 1994 Broadway revival of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Carousel in the role of Carrie Pipridge. David Richards of the New York Times called Audra's performance in Carousel the real find in this production, commending her voice and her comedy. Most critics didn't make mention of a black actress playing a role traditionally played by a white one, though there were inevitably others who found the casting problematic. I talk about this in episode 4, so I won't go into it much more here, but when asked on certain critics citing issue with the non-traditional casting, Audra said, "It's a universal story with universal music. If these people are concentrating on the fact that I'm black, well, there's nothing I can do about it." Audra's Tony Award for Best Featured Actress in a Musical was obviously validation from a majority of members from the American Theater Wing and the Broadway League. But a Tony Award does not always bring forth more work, and this is especially true for performers of color in the Broadway theater. The New York Times reported that in 1994, minorities accounted for 15% of Broadway performers, and besides Carousel, the Broadway production of Miss Saigon that was running at the time accounted for about half of that 15%. And if you remember episode 4, there are some problems with the representation in that show. So while Carousel was a great breakout opportunity for Audra, the American musical theater at that time didn't foretell any great promise for her. Audra's next opportunity would come from a play. Inspired by the master classes held by Maria Callas at the Juilliard School back in the 1970s, Terrence McNally's masterclass has Madame Callas coach 3 opera voice students, interjecting at times to reminisce about the ups and downs of her career. The final student is Sharon, entering the stage near the end of the play. The role wasn't written specifically for Audra, but when it came to playing a talented, ambitious, and misunderstood opera student, there may have been a few things she could relate to. In Masterclass, she showed off even more of her seismic range and classical technique. But Masterclass also showed Audra off to be an intuitive actress, one that could hold her own on stage with greats like Zoe Caldwell.
You will believe women can have balls, Sharon?
Some women. Yes, I do.
Verdi is daring you to show us yours. Will you do it?
Yes.
Andiamo.
Audra's performance in Masterclass would garner her second Tony Award in 1996, this time for Best Featured Actress in a Play.
I need to thank the entire family of Juilliard, the Juilliard School, for whom without I would not have been able to be as neurotic of a student as I was in Masterclass, so thank you to Juilliard.
At 26, Audra was starting to be recognized for the diversity of her talent, and musical theater writers wanted to write for her. In the summer of 1995, just before the Broadway opening of Masterclass, Audra flew to Toronto to take part in the first workshop productions of a new musical. Based on the novel by E.L. Doctorow, Ragtime, which was produced by this guy, featured a book by Terrence McNally and a score by Stephen Flaherty and Lynn Ahrens. While performing in Masterclass would keep Audra from taking part in the next 2 workshops, Audra was invited to originate the role of Sarah Brown, first in the premiere production in Toronto in December 1996, followed by the Broadway premiere in January 1998. Ragtime was, in a word, huge. Boasting an enormous cast, grand set designs, the show actually ran in a newly built theater on 42nd Street. all financed by Garth Drabinsky and his company, Livent. Many Broadway insiders speculated how Drabinsky was able to successfully finance all of this, which, of course, we now know he wasn't. Regardless of the show business drama, Ragtime was one of those once-in-a-lifetime shows that boasted an embarrassment of Broadway talent. For her third featured role on Broadway, Audra McDonald won her third Tony Award. She would round out the rest of 1998 by releasing her debut album, featuring songs from then-emerging musical theater writers like Adam Guettel, Jason Robert Brown, and Michael John LaChiusa. Audra had actually auditioned for LaChiusa back in 1993, and based on that audition, he set out to write a musical for her. The culminating piece was Marie Christine, a retelling of the Medea story set in New Orleans in the 19th century. The show opened for a limited run at Broadway's Lincoln Center at the end of 1999. While Lincoln Center gave the show an open-ended option, the show's mixed reviews eliminated this possibility. Before opening the show, some had questioned Audra's ability to helm a lead role on Broadway, but her performance in Marie Christine became the show's central praise. In his review for the New York Times, Ben Brantley said, "When Audra McDonald sings her first notes as the Medea-like heroine of Marie Christine, there is clearly sorcery at work. The commitment, conviction, and full-strength talent she brings to the evening becomes its own argument for the endurance of the American musical." After receiving a leading actress nomination for her work on Marie Christine, Audra spent the next few years establishing herself in film and television. One of her first notable roles on TV was as Grace Farrell in Disney's adaptation of the musical Annie. The film was well received, though apparently there were some people at Disney who felt nervous showing Daddy Warbucks proposing marriage to his black assistant. But one of Audra's best appearances during this time was in HBO's adaptation of Margaret Edson's play, Wit. In Wit, she plays Susie, a hospital nurse put in charge of the care of Vivian Baring, a stern and armored woman undergoing treatment for virulent cancer. While audiences may have been used to Audra's expressive and grand performances on the stage, her performance in Wit demonstrates a subtle but confident presence on camera. The slightest shift in her face says so much without her having to speak a word. Her scenes with Emma Thompson are charged, alive, and for me, a highlight of this movie. If you haven't seen it, I cannot recommend it enough. In 2003, Audra was approached to play the role of Ruth Younger in a Broadway revival of the play, A Raisin in the Sun, which came attached with Grammy-winning rapper Puff Daddy, or P. Diddy, Puffy, no, let's just call him Sean Combs. He was fully committed to playing the role of Walter Lee Younger, originated on stage by Sidney Poitier. Along with Felicia Rashad, who had been approached to play the role of Lena Younger, Audra McDonald was apprehensive.
Felicia Rashad and I fought it. We didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
We were like, Raisin in the Sun, come on. I mean, yeah, everybody does Raisin in the Sun, you know, it's just the mama on the couch. And then when Sean got cast, we really got concerned. We didn't understand.
Audra McDonald and Felicia Rashad met with Sean Combs and director Kenny Leon to discuss the revival, which would put Raisin in the Sun back on the Broadway stage for the first time in over 40 years. A Raisin in the Sun was written by Lorraine Hansberry. With the play's premiere in 1959, she became the first female black writer produced on Broadway.
We live in a nation where everything which is talked about in terms of the fact that we are going to be the mightiest, the toughest, the roughest cats going, you know, in the whole world. And when a Negro says something about, I'm tired, I can't stand it no more, I want to hit somebody, you say that we're sitting here panting and ranting for violence, you know? It's not right.
A Raisin in the Sun tells the story of the Younger family. Following the death of the family patriarch, the Youngers are presented with the opportunity to leave their cramped kitchenette apartment in the south side of Chicago and move into a house in Clybourne Park, a white neighborhood. Among its many themes, A Raisin in the Sun explores the limitations of the American dream, as experienced by Black Americans.
I went and read the script again. I think it was by the time I got to Ruth's big explosion when she finds out that they're gonna move, that I thought, I am a fool, I have to do this. I have to do this. And then to bring in the audiences that we brought in. And these people would be loud before the show started and diddy for a couple minutes into it. And then by the end of the show, they were quiet as a mouse. They were standing and applauding, they were crying. And this was an introduction to theater for them. So for me, the whole experience, once again, me running from this experience, it turned out to be life-altering for me. And it was the hardest character I've ever played. Maybe it's because there were so many things about her that were too close to me that I had a hard time finding.
The 2004 revival of A Raisin in the Sun brought this American classic to a whole new generation. A few years later, Audra McDonald would return to the stage in the reimagining of another American classic. The Gershwins' Porgy and Bess is considered by many to be America's greatest opera. At the same time, the piece has been subject to controversy since its premiere in 1935. The classification of its score has been debated time and time again, but more crucially, the opera's depiction of African Americans has long drawn criticism, facing accusations of misogynistic and racist stereotypes. After a series of workshops commissioned by the Gershwin Estates in 2011, Audra McDonald was cast in the role of Bess in Diane Paulus's new production of Porgy and Bess. The production hired playwright Susan Laurie Parks to adapt the piece for a contemporary audience.
It's a show with some dramatic holes, some missteps dramatically. I have to make it right. I have to flesh out the characters.
From the very beginning, we were setting out to make sure that this is about these people and their struggles and their story, and really focusing on the dramatic story as opposed to, look at all those black people up there, boy, they sing well, and they get passionate, and and then they kill, and they drink the whiskey and they smoke the whatever.
Patrick Healy of the New York Times visited rehearsals leading up to the pre-Broadway tryout in Boston. His article recounting what he saw, that may have sensationalized the revival's planned changes, prompted Stephen Sondheim to write a scathing letter that accused Audra McDonald, among others, for having no respect for the history of the piece. The letter, that ran in the New York Times, caused a wave of negative press ahead of the show's out-of-town tryout. It would prompt a number of investors to drop out, endangering the show's Broadway transfer. In spite of this negative press, Porgy and Bess did successfully make the move to Broadway in January 2012. While critics were divided on the success of the textual and dramatic revisions, the production did find an audience, and at the Tony Awards that year, it was awarded Best Revival of a Musical, and for her performance, Audra McDonald was awarded Best Leading Actress in a Musical. This was her fifth, tying with Angela Lansbury and Julie Harris for the most Tony wins. In February 2014, it was announced that Audra McDonald would return to Broadway that spring in Lainey Robertson's play Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill, in the role of Billie Holiday. Over the course of the past year, Audra had quietly workshopped the play with director Lonnie Price, who had brought the piece to her. The two had previously worked together on the 2007 Broadway revival of 110 in the Shade and a concert staging of Sweeney Todd with the New York Philharmonic. After a successful backers audition, producer Jeffrey Richards gave the green light, setting a Broadway opening for April. This is Billie Holiday, performing on television in 1958.
Oh, what little moonlight can do. Oh, what little moonlight can do.
Seemingly, this performer and her very distinctive voice has little in relation with Audra McDonald, which would make her eventual transformation all the more impressive.
Ooh, what a little moonlight can do. Wait a while till little moonbeam comes peeping through.
Set in 1959, just 4 months before her death, the play takes place in a seedy Philadelphia nightclub during one of Billie's performances. Broke and riddled by addiction, she struggles to get through the performance, at times recounting stories from her life. Audra's transformation into Billie is uncanny. The timbre of her voice, her vocal phrasing that hangs behind the beat, her clenched right hand swinging in rhythm to the song, she simply channels Billie Holiday. But her performance goes beyond imitation. There is just as much of the actress in the role as the character she inhabits. While Billie Holiday is often remembered for her tragic circumstances, Audra brings a surprising and welcome amount of joy and humor to this role. In spite of the bigotry and turbulence she faced in her life, Audra's Billie Holiday is a woman who refuses to be seen as a victim or a tragic figure. This performance was recorded live in its entirety as an album and for an HBO special after its Broadway run.
The American Theatre Wing's Tony Award goes to Audra McDonald, Lady Day.
Audra's win for Best Leading Actress in a Play was her 6th Tony win, not only winning the most of any performer, but being the first to win in all acting categories. Let's be clear. Audra McDonald is a legend. Her massive and diverse body of work is argument enough that she is one of the greatest artists we have today. One could see her historic and deserved Tony win for Lady Day as the Broadway theater's recognition of this. But even with or without these awards and recognitions, Audra McDonald is an artist that strives to challenge herself with every new project she takes on.
For me, what attracts me is something most definitely that scares me. Usually if I'm scared of it, I know I have to do it. Something where I'm going to be challenged, something where I feel at the end of the day, or the end of the run, or the end of the experience, I will know more than I did going into it. I will be a better actress, a better artist. It doesn't necessarily mean that I will succeed at the role. I may not necessarily, be revelatory in the part or have figured it all out by the end of the run or ever. But will I have grown as a result? That's very important to me. Evolution is very important to me as an artist. I feel like you have to continue to evolve as an artist or stop doing it, Right.
From the beginning of Audra McDonald's career, she has made tremendous strides for greater representation in the entertainment industry. Such strides are not easily made, but Audra has navigated these waves with grace, humility, and a generous spirit that resonates to her audience and the next generation of performers. Audra has also used her platform to raise awareness for causes that are close to her. She is an ally of the LGBTQ community that fiercely advocated for the Marriage Equality Act. She serves on the International Board of Directors for the Covenant House that helps homeless youth in need throughout Canada, Latin America, and the United States. And most recently, along with other members of the Black theater community, she has co-founded Black Theater United, an organization with a wide range of goals, from forcing civic engagement of Black and Brown communities, fighting systemic racism in the theater, and breaking barriers through mentorship within the arts for young Black artists. In her Tony speech for Lady Day, Audra acknowledged Black women in the industry that had preceded her. Even when being recognized for her own achievements, she shares her awareness that they might not have been possible without those who came before her.
But I want to thank all the shoulders of the strong and brave and courageous women that I am standing on. I am standing on Lena Horne's shoulders. I'm standing on Maya Angelou's shoulders. I'm standing on Diane Carroll and Ruby Dee, and most of all, Billie Holiday. You deserved so much more than you were given when you were on this planet. This is for you, Billie. Thank you so much.
While we look at Audra McDonald in reverence for all of her past accomplishments, we must also remember that we are watching an artist that is still evolving. She continues to hone her craft and give voice to what needs to be said. Even in the dark, the world is just a little brighter with Audra McDonald in it. I can't wait to see what she does next.